empty that area is. It's an airport. Yes. I just arrived in Taiwan, and this airport is Taoyuan Airport. I guess it's near Taipei. And I'm walking there. It looks like I'm by myself, but no, that's not true. There are people around. But I have to go up those escalators. If you look there, you see a flight for New York. This did right there, right there. Paris. Camera is moving so much. If you stop the video, you'll see this New York. And the gate, I think it's CC3. But anyway, I think it was like two and a half hours I have to wait. Probably 2 hours layover. Yeah, back right there. And go up these steps. So, what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to walk through the area with like the duty-free shops and so forth to see what they got. It shows the gates to see. When I arrived, I had to go through the security, not intensive, but you just go through, you know. It's one of those things I think sometimes in Asia, you notice that you land in a flight and they have you go through security. I'm not sure what they usually find, if they find anything, because if you're getting off a plane, you know, you should be secure. Yeah, unless you bring in like knives or something and forks. So I'm coming out to the main area there. And they got a lounge area where you can go and eat. In the second video, I'm going to go up there, upstairs, show you around. So this is Taiwan. When I was in high school, I learned that Taiwan, the name used to be Formosa. A little history there. And there was a civil war in China, and there was the national government and the communist government. And the national government was run by Chiang Kai-shek. And after the Civil War, this was around, I think, probably 47, they took off and they fled to Taiwan, and that's where they've been since. And at the United Nations, Taiwan used to represent China. So it's only until, I believe it was like in the early 70s that this changed. Because like back then, like you had like a lot of the African nations, they got their independence from the Europeans, like the British, the French, German, and so forth. Right? World War II kind of destroyed a lot of the colonial powers, like the British Empire, was affected greatly. The French too. So you had the remnants left. So the nationalists By the way, they were supported during World War II by the United States. The United States actually had a general. I don't know whether he was a five-star general, but by the name of General George Stilwell, and he was based in Chongqing, China. That's on the eastern part of China. And he was in charge of Burma, India, China, the war theater. So this was George Stilwell, the general, American general. So the Americans were supporting the nationals Chinese. Now, this may seem strange today, right? You know, for people who don't know the history, but it's true. So eventually, the communists won over, right? Not the government that the United States was supporting, which was the Nationalist Party. So the communists won over. The Communist Party controlled by Mao Zedong, or Mao Zedong, depending on the pronunciation, Mao Zedong. And apparently Mao and his people didn't really do much about it. They figure, okay, you know, these people were in charge of the government here, the nationalist government in China, and good riddance, you know. Who need them? They're going to Formosa, which is Taiwan. You don't need them. They're probably troublemakers. So from what I read that the General George Stilwell said that there was a lot of corruption around Chiang Kai-shek and his people. Because remember, when he was there during World War II, you know, and they were there because of the Japanese. Japanese were in China, and the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. So he was dealing with Chiang Kai-shek, his wife, and others like that. Not with the Communist Party. And he said, well, you know, there's so much corruption. Not necessarily that Chiang Kai-shek was corrupt, but the people around him. So maybe that should be a lesson, you know, that corruption can have severe consequences. And because why would the Chinese people want to go with a Communist Party if not to see, well, you know, they're not getting anything under the Nationalist Party? Same thing with Vietnam years later, right? The American government was supporting the South Vietnamese. I believe his name was Diem, the president of South Vietnam. Out of then Saigon was the capital. And they said there was a lot of corruption too. A lot of corruption. So it's kind of strange that the United States finds itself supporting people in government that are corrupt. So that was the charge. And out of China, General George Stilwell was the one that was making this remark. He wrote back to President Roosevelt at the time, and he said there's so much corruption here, you see. Now I personally think if you treat people fairly and make them part of what's going on, they will help reward you. And I think maybe that's why the communists probably won in China, because I don't see why Mao Zedong and, you know, all these other communists should have won over China, but they did. And that's what happened. So after World War II, not too long after, you had the fight between the nationalists and the communists. And the communists eventually won over the people because China has a big population. You know, how could you convince so many people to go along with you? So the nationalists fled to Formosa, which is Taiwan. But at the time, when the United Nations was formed, China, the people, the party, the Nationalist Party in Taiwan represented China. They were speaking for the voice of China, the people on the mainland. So after World War II and the breakup of these empires like the French, the British, and so forth, what happened was that, like a lot of countries in Africa that were coming out to be independent and having a seat in the United Nations, many of them were helped by Mao Zedong in China, like with railroads, medical care. Mao Zedong was able to send like doctors, nurses to some of the African countries, help them with railroads and so forth. So they decided they're going to reward mainland China. So when it came a vote, you know, well, who's going to lead China? Is it going to be the people on Taiwan, this little strip of an island, or this massive country with millions and millions of people? You know, they have over 1 billion people. Now, I don't know what was the population back then, right after World War II, but it was still in the millions, you know. Even if it was 500 million, 600 million, there was still a lot of people. Yeah. Sorry, this gimbal is acting up. See how it's spinning the camera? Hopefully nobody gets dizzy there. It's very hard to control it. It just like goes off like that and spins and spins and spins, you know, until finally it can get control of it. But yeah, getting back to this story here. So what happened with all these new nations coming in, like from the African continent, who were able to take a seat in the General Assembly at the United Nations in New York. The vote was up. Well, who should represent China? You can't have two. You can't have two. And it was Taiwan. Taiwan was the country originally. They were given the seat at the table for the United Nations. So the General Assembly, with a lot of African nations, they voted that mainland China should represent the people of China, not Taiwan. So Taiwan was kicked out of the United Nations. So that's the little history there for people who may not know. But originally, Taiwan was the one at the United Nations in New York. They had the seat in New York, which would only make sense because Taiwan only represents, what, a few million people, with mainland China, well, I don't know at the time what the population was, but you can easily check that out. But and I'm talking about in the early 1970s, like maybe 72, 73, 74. That's when these African countries were seated at the United Nations. And they decide, well, you know, we're going to vote because remember, Mao died sometime, I think maybe 72 or 76, something like that. So Mao did a number of things for them, for the African countries, and they decided to reward him. that's why it was kind of shocking when I see years later, how the modern Chinese people were treating the Africans, like Africans renting rooms, apartments. These people were evicted like in the middle of the night, have their luggage, no place to go, and so forth. And the whole point is, if it were not for these African countries who voted in the General Assembly, modern day China would not be sitting at the United Nations. And you can do a lot of stuff with the United Nations, like China holds a seat in the Security Council, where the United States holds a seat, Russia holds a seat. When Russia, it used to be the Soviet Union, and when they broke up, Russia took over. There wasn't any vote, but Russia took over from the Soviet Union. So you only have like a few nations that sit on the Security Council. China is one of them, right? Russia is one of them. The United States is one of them. I believe France and the British and so forth. So China plays a very important role. They can hold up a lot of stuff. And the way it's designed is that you have to have like a consensus, 100% vote. That's why either the rules need to change, because you have a lot of countries now in the United Nations that were never there before when these rules were made. So I think it's kind of stupid that people should be subjected to rules like that, that they didn't have anything to do with, and they were colonized at the time. They were colonies of these great powers like the British and so forth, But anyway, here in this video, I'm upstairs. This is like the food court area. And in the next video, I'm going to be walking down that way. You see garden, that's like Eva Air. You see Eva Air right there. It's kind of hard to make up, but that's what it's saying, the green. That's Eva Air. So I'll catch you in the next video in the food court at Taoyuan Airport in Taiwan.